All right, thank you everyone. Just starting our last session here. Uh, we will be focusing with the moderator here for leveraging mega sports events to advance gender equality. The moderator is John Norright, who is the director of the School of Kinesiology at Louisiana State University. So take it away, John.
Thank you. Whoa, that is loud. So thanks for doing that. Bonjour à tous. Je m'appelle Jean Norright. J'habite en Louisiane, dans la partie française des États-Unis. Mais mon français n'est pas bon, alors maintenant, je vais passer à anglais. I'm John Norright. I direct the School of Kinesiology at Louisiana State University. The mic's not working now. Okay, here we go. Hold on, is that working? Okay. Oh, okay. I'll talk loudly till this is ready and try not to hurt anybody. I'm director of the School of Kinesiology at Louisiana State University. We're known in the United States simply as LSU. You don't have to say anything more in the United States and people know who we are. We are a university that is driven by sports, and in fact this weekend I have to be back because it's homecoming, which is a big deal in the United States, and we have 103,531 people coming to our match against arch enemy Ole Miss, Mississippi, University of Mississippi. So I typically, when I go in the international setting, revert to my Australian half because it's much more similar to what other countries experience. The United States is unique. Having said that, we also are excited that we have possibly the best across the board women's sports program in the United States. And we have a rule now in the US at university level where participants, athletes can earn money for name, image, and likeness. So one of our gymnasts, Livy Dunn, has pioneered this effort. She has over 10 million followers between Instagram and TikTok, produces her own content, and has now earned $10 million in revenue from corporate sponsorship. So she actually makes more money as one of the members of our gymnastics team, and she is not the best. She's very good, but not the very best on our team. Whereas Caitlin Clark, who you can't go anywhere in the United States without hearing her name, makes $76,000 a year, but they sold a rookie card of her for the WNBA for $80,000. So there's a lot of things happening rapidly in the women's sport landscape, whether that's in the United States or around the world. I was fortunate enough before I was in Louisiana to be in my other country working at the University of Sydney, and I was in Sydney for the Women's World Cup in 23. I went to every single match that was held in Sydney, which was super exciting because the Matildas did better than ever. But disappointing as well because the face of the World Cup coming in was Sam Kerr, and she injured her calf. I'm a little into media coverage of her because I'm writing a cultural biography of Sam Kerr. A cultural biography doesn't mean I sit down and talk to her, but I talk about the representation of Sam in the public sphere, in social media and in media. That tournament raised record amounts of income for any women's tournament. Similarly, the Euros held in England. We had 87,000 at the finals, sold out Wembley. It looks like the Women's Rugby World Cup in England next summer is also going to sell out Twickenham Stadium, the largest rugby stadium in the world. So we're at an inflection point where there are a lot of exciting things happening in women's sports, but at the same time, when we look at mega events, we talk a lot about legacy, we talk a lot about impact and representation. And so our panel today, I think, is perfectly suited for this purpose because we have a media person, we have somebody from the IOC, and yes, for those who follow my work, I am on stage with somebody from the IOC. So, um, uh, the Olympics are a mixed event, and then for the next Euro here in Switzerland, we have the women's only event, which purports to be, and I think will be, a game changer for women's football in Switzerland. At least I hope so. And if you go and look up next summer's Euros online, you will see that every host location, city or canton has a lot about legacy and impact already on their website. So we know that this is a big part of what's going to happen in the next summer. So I want to start by just quickly introducing the panel. So we have Elsa Arapi, who is the Senior Sports Rights Manager and Women's Sport Project Lead for the European Broadcasting Union. So first, and then I'll come back in order. Pedro Diaz, OLY. So he competed for Portugal in judo before becoming now the Gender Equality and Inclusion Manager for the IOC. And then last but definitely not least, with what's happening now, is Doris Keller, who is the Tournament Director for UEFA Women's Euro 2025. So we have a media, a mixed event, and a women-only event. So I'm going to have each panelist just kind of introduce a little bit more about what they do, and then we're going to keep this session kind of free-flowing. So I may have a couple of follow-up questions, but I want to engage the audience because I think this is really important, a really important issue, because this is the session where female athletes are the most visible and can have the most impact across society as a whole.
Hello. So I work for the European Broadcasting Union. For those of you that don't know us, we are the largest alliance of public service media. We have 113 organizations in 56 countries and a potential audience of a little over 1 billion people. So if we get things right for women's sport, we can really make a difference. We launched a women's sport initiative in 2019. And the goal has been from the beginning to bring gender balance in our member organizations, not only in terms of programming, but also in the sports units, because we know that gender matters in the newsroom. So what are those things, those elements of broadcast that are relevant for us from a gender perspective? First of all, visibility. So the amount of the media output that goes to women and the amount that goes to men, and I'm sure everyone knows here that the gap is quite significant. Already somebody mentioned that it's 15%, already up from a single digit, but still not enough. The second thing we're looking at is quality of coverage. And quality means depth of analysis in our reporting. It means production value that we put when covering women's events. And storytelling. Storytelling is very, very important. The stories we tell about women. And the questions we ask ourselves around storytelling are we looking at women and reporting on women as serious competitors? Do we celebrate their athletic prowess? Do we put forward diverse role models that can inspire the fans and athletes of tomorrow? Or are we sort of positioning them as inferior to a male standard? Are we sexualizing and trivializing them? And the third element that's also important for us is representation within sports broadcasting. So we want more women in public-facing roles as presenters, as pundits, as commentators, because we want to normalize the presence of women in sport. And also for the girls and the women that are watching the sports programs at home, we want them to see sports media as a career path. So these are the things that we occupy ourselves with. How we approach these challenges, we have, I would say, a multi-layered approach. So we invest in sports rights of female-focused properties, the Women's Euro being one of them. We actually have a record number of broadcasters in that contract. And for the first time, every single match is going to be live. We published a handbook on how to balance sports broadcasting in terms of gender. We do master classes and other trainings on women's sport. We do research. We facilitate knowledge exchange, but also content exchange between our members. We do a lot of things, actually. A lot of new projects also coming up next year. We try to keep the topic front and center in the minds of our broadcasters.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Congratulations to the Global Observatory for this amazing event. It's been great. Talking about the Olympic Games. I don't know if all of you are aware, but with the Olympic Agenda 2020+5 and the previous agenda, gender equality is one of our priorities. That's why internally we have a specific team working on this. So we work in 3 different spheres. The IOC as an organization, what can we do? The IOC as owner of the Olympic Games, and the IOC working as leader of the Olympic movement, which is my sphere. So I work directly with the international federations and with the National Olympic Committee. So we provide support that during the Olympic Games, the biggest sport event in the world, we can achieve our objectives. That is the Olympic Games to be the most gender balanced sport event in the world. So we have committed with the UN Women during the Sport for Generation Equality Forum that we would reach 50% of athletes quota representation during the Olympic Games. And for the first time in history, we managed to do it. So for some people, oh, come on, it's just a quota. No, it's not. It takes a lot of negotiation because although the IOC is the owner of the Olympic Games, the IOC is not the owner of sport. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved. So you need to understand that in the Olympic Games, you have the OCOGs, the organizing committees. You have the international federations. You have the national Olympic committees. You have the broadcasters and so on and so on. So every single thing that to change the normal status, it takes a lot of negotiation. So we managed to reach this objective. It's true, there's still a lot of space to improve in other areas, but we are working on it. Sometimes we are criticizing, oh, we believe that the IOC could do more, and I'm the first one to admit it, and we are working hard on this. But you also need to understand that when we communicate outside, well, we communicate about the Olympic Games, about the athletes' achievements and everything. We don't communicate everything that we do regarding specific topics like gender equality, environmental sustainability, and so on and so on. But we are working on this, and we expect that LA could be even better than it was in Paris. And you could see, I think that one of the most talked topic during the games was exactly gender equality. So many times we talked about the 50% quota and other areas. So this is something that the IOC wants, but that the society is also demanding. So the society doesn't accept this anymore. And I always give this example. I went to the games with my son. I didn't went to work. I went there to watch some events, and my son is 9 years old. And we were watching table tennis, and at a certain moment he said, you know, Dad, I don't understand your work. And I'm like, how don't you understand? I don't understand why do you fight for women to have the same rights than men, because this already exists. And I'm like, no, unfortunately not. And they're like, no, 100 years ago it wasn't like this, but today it is like this. And I'm like, well, I wish. So the youngsters, they don't accept this type of discrimination anymore. So as part of the sustainability of the sport, gender equality, it's really necessary.
I have 100% women competing in my tournament next summer. No, sorry to say that, but it's. I'm in a bit a different situation than he is. We would like to bring women's football forward, and I think that Switzerland has applied for this Women's Euro in Switzerland. One of the reasons is to bring the football in Switzerland to the next level. In Switzerland, it has been until 70s it was forbidden to play football for females. You could not have a license, so we are far behind to have equal opportunities, because we also have a lot of problems with infrastructure in Switzerland. So if you have only one football pitch in a small village, unfortunately only the boys are playing, and this is one big thing which we want to achieve, to have more girls playing. The Swiss FA is doing a big legacy program, and it's supported heavily by the host cities. And of course, we as Women's Euro SA, we also supporting this. And this is, we really want to bring it to the next level. But of course, we also want to bring women's football to a next level. We want to have continue with the growth of women's football worldwide. And I think if we continue what happened in England and with the continuation in Australia and New Zealand, I think, yeah, we're good. We want to do things different than in men's football. We don't want to copy paste. It's important that women's football is different. Also, the audience is different. We have definitely different people watching women's football, and we would like to keep that. We have less security issues and hooliganism than on men's football, and this is a big step, which a big thing we would like to continue. And copy paste is good, but that's not what we want.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind. And one is, I've been following this incredible growth trajectory for women's sports that's come since COVID in particular. We're already headed that direction, but there seems to be this real boom time for women in sport. And the concern that you rightly raised, Doris, is that it becomes a copy, and so the athletes become maybe less accessible. Maybe the media coverage can help with that by the storytelling that happens during the tournaments. Because I will say this, being a dual American and Australian, US and Australian citizen, I loved the first week of the Olympics, because in swimming, lots of medals go to the US and Australia. And I also did my PhD in Canada. So, I'm working with a Canadian gold medalist at the moment on an autobiography. So I follow that. But the discourse in those countries, coming out of both the World Cup and the Olympic Games, focused on, our women athletes won more medals than the men. Our women athletes are the focal point. In the US coverage, Simone Biles was kind of the face for the Olympic Games. Katie Ledecky in swimming, the highly successful athletes. So I guess my question to the panel, and then I want to kind of throw it open for some discussion, is what role can the media and event organizers play in helping to shape a women's sports landscape that is something that's by and for women, and that inspires girls to be more successful in sport in the future?
From a media point of view, major events are when visibility is at its highest. We don't have that throughout the year, but we do have it during major events. Women really get to be in the spotlight, and they get to share the world stage with their male counterparts, or the whole of the stage if it's a women-only event. So for us, it really is the time to capitalize on that attention, to not only energize the existing fan base, but also create pathways to audiences that do not yet engage with sport. What I would say is, again, the focus is on storytelling here, is some of the things that I've been hearing from our members, but I also see in data, is the fascination of the fans with the athlete. So I think that the best story that the media can tell right now is the story of the athletes. And what I see, especially in younger groups, so the 18 to 34 age group, they will very often, about half of the time actually, go online to look for interviews of their favorite athletes, but also non-sporting content. So what we call off-court content. They want to see clips that give them a glimpse into who the athletes are in themselves and what their personal lives look like. And I think that's great news for sports women because obviously that's not true of every female athlete, but in general, they're great at that. They're very good communicators. When they answer interview questions, they do it in a way that's very thoughtful. They're much more accessible than male athletes, and they're more comfortable creating content for social. And they do it in a way that is very authentic. So they are able to create those connection points with the audience. And in terms of opening up to wider audiences that we didn't have before, there was a trend that I saw this summer that I think is going to grow bigger and bigger, is this crossover between sport and entertainment and culture. So NBC, for example, instead of working exclusively with the sports professionals that they usually work with, they brought in Snoop Dogg, and they brought Kelly Clarkson, and Martha Stewart did some really cute things with Snoop and other personalities from culture that bring their own following into the sport. Vogue did a fashion event in Paris, which they called the opening ceremony before the opening ceremony, and the live stream was watched by 60 million girls worldwide. And overall, over the next few days as well, I think it grew up to 250 million. So again, for sure, there is some overlap in that crowd with the sport crowd, but this is an exposure of sport into an audience that perhaps does not have any connection with it. And it also works the other way, sport as a driver for culture. And I want to talk about my favorite athlete from Paris this summer, which is Ilona Maher, the rugby player. So Ilona is such an amazing role model for women and girls. Very authentic, very funny, very spontaneous. So she's now the most followed rugby player in the world, male or female, millions of followers online. And she's now a contestant at Dancing with the Stars. And she's appealing to that audience, but she keeps on sharing the same message, which is your body doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be obsessed with how it looks. Just see what it does for you, how strong it is. Try rugby. If rugby's not for you, try another sport. So I think that, that intersection works really well, and I would love to see more of that in the future.
I think in football we also have to create idols for these young kids. At the moment, most of 10 years ago, the kids had male idols, and now the female idols are coming up. Now it's quite cool to see on the street, you see girls with a football shirt and there's a female players on the back. This wasn't existing when I was young, and I think girls need female players as an idol and not male players. And I think that's a bit the future. They are more accessible, definitely. We had quite a good example. We have been approached by the captain of the Swiss national team who called us and said, I would like to help to promote you women's Euro in Switzerland. How can we help you as players from the Swiss national team? And I think that doesn't happen on the male side. And I think that's also we are still on a level that they're accessible, and I hope that continues. Yeah. And even the players often say, we don't want to earn that much money as the boys are or the men's are, but we would like to live from what we are doing. Yeah.
Thank you. We need to understand that gender inequality, it's not something specific from sport, and it's not also something specific from the Olympic Games, okay? The difference is that the Olympic Games, it represents a unique platform to promote gender equality. So what happens is that one thing that happens during the Olympic Games has a huge impact in all the sport environment and the society. That's why we also did a big effort to balance more the sport competition schedule, okay? So in the past, and if you like to see the first week, you will see most of the women's finals and some sports happening on the first week because they were not considered that with so much broadcasting, and all the men's final happening on the second week. Or I can give you the example, for example, my sport, judo. So what happened is that there was this perception that men's judo was more interesting than women's judo. So although all the finals are alternated, it always ended with men. And I have a friend of mine who works with the organization of international sport events, and she said, no, it's impossible to change. It was always like this, so it's impossible to change. Well, in the Olympic Games, we change it. And what happens now, there's a pressure, because if we did it in the Olympic Games, well, the International Federation will have to start doing it in their World Championships. And then the continental associations, they will have to start doing in their events. And then the national federations will start doing it. So a small change in the Olympic Games, you change the entire sport environment. So this is the power of the Olympic Games.
Oh my God, there's about 500,000 things that I would love to say just off of the three comments there. But Ilona Meyer, yeah, absolutely. I've been in part of a group that's advising the new 15s professional competition in the US, so it's a godsend. I know people said, well, how did you feel in the US-Australia match? I said, the United States had so much more to gain by winning the bronze medal. But I'm also thinking about the pop culture environment as well. One of the things that went viral in the US in the last few days, you know, we have an election coming up. Every magazine I saw in Charles de Gaulle had something about divided United States and everything else. Taylor Swift wrote that she was voting for Kamala Harris, but then Caitlin Clark liked Taylor Swift's post, and millions of people were talking about what does that mean, how does that work? But at the same time, with that exposure, because I've been following this, there are a lot of trolls that feed into the discourse around the top two rookie basketball players, one being a white woman, one being a black woman, Angel Reese, who actually went to LSU. And the trolls have fed into the discourse of the election. The stereotyping is still bad, but I want to keep things a little positive, and I leave it up to the audience to decide whether we're going to be positive or negative. But I'm here to say that I have had a 20-year long run of criticizing the Olympic movement about certain things. But we have to accept that things are going in the right direction. When I started writing about women's sports in the 1990s, body shaming, you know, women who looked like Ilona were, you know, butch, lesbian, men, they shouldn't play, or if they were, you know, defined as, quote, pretty or whatever, that, oh, you know, they're kind of okay, but why do they want to play a sport like rugby or football? In Australia, the Matildas are here and the Socceroos are here. Not to say that one should be at the expense of the other, but with that popularity has come a tremendous rise in participation. So a lot of things are happening, and I love the way that the media content is telling these stories, but also how the women athletes are doing that as well. If you look at some of the most active on social media, they're shaping their own personal brand, so to speak, but always seem to have a view to the wider responsibility of their own position. So I want to throw it open to the audience for some questions, because it's the last session, so you need to say what you think or what you want to say. And you know, this is, to me, a hugely important topic, because there's so much that you can leverage off of the visibility of mega events and the elite professional competitions.
There we go. So with the potential of mega sporting events, there's so much attention, and that's wonderful within this space, and it's great visibility, and it's got all these very positive things. My focus is actually around community and mass, like really the people that aren't playing in these elite competitions, maybe not even watching. How do you see maybe the legacy or the impact of these events really advancing or changing things at the grassroots level, for the people that are just playing for fun in the park, for people that are playing in clubs that have no aspiration to be a professional athlete, they just like maybe not even playing sport, but they just like being active. I mean, obviously sport is the format in these events, but yeah, I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts from the three perspectives we have on the stage, because yeah, I'm just being very curious about that.
We would like that it become normal in Switzerland that kids or girls are playing football. And we will raise on a long term also the level of the top teams or the top players in Switzerland, because we need more players playing. And one of the target in the legacy program is that we double the amount of licenses. But not only players, we also want to have much more coaches, because the girls now, they have mainly female coaches, because 15, 20 years ago we didn't have women playing football. But then it comes with referees, functionaries in football club. In Switzerland, especially in football, most of the functionaries are still male. And our sports minister said 40% of a Swiss sports federation should be, a board member should be female. We are far away from that in most of the sports we have. And we would like to change that landscape. We would like that women are also participating in clubs as functionaries, in federations, because there are enough good women who could do that. Yeah, and I think that's important. And also on accessibility, for us it was important to keep the prices for Women's Euro quite low. That it is still a local tournament. In England, 80% of the spectators were locals. But we also want to keep it free to wear, and we're very happy that we have a deal with EBU with most of the European countries. It's still free to wear, that everybody can watch women's football next summer at home, and it's not on pay platforms.
From a media perspective, I would probably say we need a little less focus on the business of sport and a little more focus on how positive an active lifestyle is, and formative for young people. There's just too much out there about how much money that player made, the transition window, how many billions moved from one place to the other. The billions are for the men, they're not for the women. But sport has such a positive impact on people's life, an active lifestyle, so many life lessons from being part of a team, from being an athlete, dealing with failure. So I would say, again, putting forward strong, healthy, positive role models, which are the female athletes, and less focus on the business of sport.
Should I?
You
I
could
think just 1 minute.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
And then we'll pass on to.
Regarding the Olympic Games, well, with the OCOGs, with the local organizations, they have a legacy program. Okay, so in Paris it was tremendous. So they did so many things. So for example, sport venues. Only 1% of the sport venues in Paris they had the name of a woman. Most of them were named men. So from that moment, they will now be also have the name of women. They have a specific label for organizations who are going to organize an event and respond to specific criteria. So they did a lot of things, and this is something that we are already working, for example, with Milano Cortina. That's why my head of unit is not here. She's at this moment in Milano working specifically with OCOG there, with a legacy program, with LA the same thing. But now I wanted to say something else and I forgot. I wanted to be so short. But yeah, I know what you mean. What is important, and we need to understand this, the IOC, it's impossible to reach every single person in the world. This needs to be a joint effort, okay? We work directly together with our stakeholders, the international federations, the national Olympic committees, and we empower them to take actions with their stakeholders. The international federations with the national federations, with the continental associations, and then the national federations to work with the clubs. That way, you have the entire sport movement being reached, okay? And you can reach a small club in Kenya or a big professional club in Japan. But the important is that we work together, okay? And that's very important, because if we don't work together, the change, it will be much slower than we expect.
I just read an article by Bruce Gabe, the Canadian piece of research that came out, especially about this empowering through top athletes. The Canadian government is asking for a lot of money, millions, because after the Olympics, it's going to have a huge impact and everyone's going to be doing sport. And they have done 20 years of research, and they say that there is absolutely no connection. That we do, people are excited, people are empowered and inspired, but when it comes to actually changing things at grassroots level and people coming on board as in sport, that doesn't happen. So this, if you don't believe me, I have the article in my bag, okay? But I think it's something important to think about when you're organizing events, because it's not just enough to say it. Research says other things as well.
Yeah, I'm going to take that since I know the authors of that article and the research. Canada, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Canada has had this roller coaster affair with elite sports since the Ben Johnson race, where most of the other athletes were also doped. So there's been some scapegoating and other things that have happened. There's been some things that have happened in terms of abuse and scandals within different sporting parts of the Canadian sporting landscape. Having said that, when you start to see some of the success stories, like especially in swimming with Maggie McNeil and Summer McIntosh, several others, you're starting to see that there is positive role modeling taking place, the women's hockey team. But you're right, I mean, it is a responsibility for event organizers and others to show how this can have an impact. The other thing is, if you want to know how an elite sports system works for a country of similar size, the Canadians just need to look at what the Australians do. Canada has more people, it has strong infrastructure, but also the same geographic challenges. of a large population spread over a large space. That's where I think the media can help bring that together in very positive ways. Do you want to?
This is exactly the case for media coverage. So we get very, very high numbers during the Olympics for women's sport and female athletes, especially when they're doing well. And then it falls off a cliff when the event is over. We can go from 40-45% to 2 and 3 and 4, depending on the country. You need to have regular and consistent coverage to sustain the fan base. Like, I fell in love with Ilona this summer, and I thought, wow, I've never watched women's rugby. I want to watch women's rugby now. I can't. I have to wait another 4 years to see them play. And what Doris was saying as well about lack of infrastructure, the little girl that's also inspired to go and practice that sport, if there's no training facility, no coaches, where are they going to do that? It really is a problem everywhere. Everybody needs to get better to see real progress, sustainable progress, actually.
Our host cities in Switzerland are very worried about this Women's Euro, that they're going to get overrun by girls who want to play football. No, because we don't have such much space as Australia and Canada. Our biggest challenge, especially in the big cities, is infrastructure. So also the host cities are not only supporting or not only doing legacy projects in football, they're doing it all over sports. They want to bring the girls more to sports, not only football, because of this lack of infrastructure. But that, I think it's a very specific problem here. Switzerland, we cannot build many more pitches. We have too many mountains. But I think this is a big worry the Swiss cities have, because such a tournament always brings a boost. We saw that 2008 with the men's Euro, so many more boys wanted to play football. And if that's the case, it's very difficult in local football clubs because you have already too many boys, and often the board of such small clubs are often mainly male functionaries, and then it's really difficult to get in as with women's teams because you don't get that support from the top of a club.
Well, and the winnings that you have from the mega events, specifically from the Olympic Games, is not only the amount of youngsters that you have doing sport, is also the values that during this competition are passed to the people. And for example, I was also reading the other day some articles in some countries when they win the medal, what this represents to the economy. So they for example, Portugal got the best results ever, and they were showing how this increased the Portuguese economy just because people were happy. People were just happy, so they were going out more, investing more in other things. They were feeling more confident. So there's a lot of other aspects and areas. I also participated in the past before coming to the IOC in a research. And so, for example, in Portugal, we only have one sport, which is football. Okay, we don't see anything else besides football. But during the research, they discovered that during the Olympic Games, 85% of the Portuguese population watch the Olympic Games. 85%, and I'm like, wow. So this is really big. In the end, it will definitely have an impact for the good or for the worse.
All of the games or just
No, all of the games. Actually, and it was funny because they also mentioned which are the sports that they prefer to watch during the games, and football was not there.
I'm just gonna just briefly follow up on that, and you know, it's interesting you mentioned about rugby. Like in the States, we can buy Rugby Pass and follow a lot of international rugby, and so there's opportunities, but you have to pay. And so if you feel attracted to rugby, but you're also attracted to football, or you're also attracted to basketball, and every little piece you have to pay a little something extra. In the States, I've been following the Women's Super League in England on DAZN and the Champions League, and so there's been access that's free. Um, do we see free-to-air broadcasters picking up more women's sports as pay television has taken more and more of the elite men's sports? Is there an opportunity there? How can we grow spectatorship outside of the cycles of the mega events? Probably
It feels great to be on the free-to-air side and talking about women's sport because we make it accessible to everyone. You can find women's football on DAZN, for example, but it's very, very expensive. And you cannot grow the audience of an emerging property, which is women's sport, by putting it behind a paywall. I understand that in order to grow, you need money, and these deals come with money. Not as many as you would think. But it's really, really important to make them available to as wider an audience as possible. So our members focus on national athletes and national teams. More and more, I see women's events make it into their listed events, which means that as national broadcasters, they have an obligation to broadcast those games. So that's already a great development. But all the things are not perfect. I do see more and more being interested in women's events than before. Women's sport, winter sport has always been doing great. That's still there. An insane growth for women's football. It's the most. It's the property that's growing the most compared to any other sport. But also other sports. And again, the focus is on the National League or the International League that provide this consistent and regular coverage so that you don't lose the fan from major event to major event.
And as I mentioned before, for this Olympic Games, we did a lot of work on the scheduling of the Olympic Games to make it more balanced. And after that, we got the Olympic Games with bigger audience in person in Paris and also on TV. So, and sometimes the changes happen and people didn't even, for example, the marathon, the athletics competition always finish with the men's marathon. This time it was with a women's marathon for the first time. Never happened before. So the changes they were made and we got better results. So that's just explaining exactly what Elsa was mentioning, that there is this a will for people also to follow women's sports.
I agree completely that celebrities were shown watching the events. Shaquille O'Neal was famous in the States, and Ted Lasso, for everyone watches women's sports. So it's become kind of a movement, and many men are doing that. Now I research it, so I follow women's sport all over the world obsessively, and I only watch Aston Villa and Borussia Dortmund in men's sports, and LSU. But beyond that, I'm following the women's sports stars and the events across a wide range of sports. So it's an exciting time, and I love the way that the organizations are playing with the schedule. The women's basketball was the same. And France is going to beat the USA pretty soon. So anyway.
Yes, hi, hello. Kind of going off of the question that you first asked, Haley, I was excited for her question, but I didn't really get an answer from you guys. So I want to bring it back. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but she was talking about how mega events can inform those that are not competing, not in a sports behavior context, that want to live, that could be possibly interested in living an active lifestyle, so outside of sport. I kind of alluded to the fact that they are indeed different, and sport can have such a powerful influence on the average person's mindset and behaviors. So I think, Doris, you alluded to you want all girls to be involved in football here in Switzerland, or more girls. So what is the plan, not just for Doris, what's the plan, if at all, to make sure those girls, when they become women, are engaged in that activity?
I hope not all the girls are playing football. There are enough other good sports to do. It's very difficult, and of course we do a lot of legacy programs. We go into schools, which at the moment is in Switzerland often is only on the boys' football side. We want to bring football also on the girls' side into schools. If they stay in football or not, or in sports, I think it's very difficult to keep them in sports, because especially in the girls' side, there's a big dropout in the teenager age.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
exactly. But
pointing out there's an opportunity point for partnership there. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm saying that there is such a possibility for the partnership opportunities with sport organization at the level that you're working at, and to be partnering with those outside of sport to influence health overall. Yep, okay.
Well, regarding the IOC, we have a specific program on this, Olympism 365. So it's all about partnership, okay? So you have the IOC working with the grassroots sports and with other organizations which necessarily are not from the sport environment, like the UN or like Qatar Foundation, and so on and so on. So they create partnerships, and in areas that they feel there are more necessity to develop in a certain area. It can be gender equality, it can be migrants, it can be refugees, whatever, many different areas, because their portfolio is quite good. But so they are working specifically with the grassroots. But you also need to understand that for us, it's complicated to reach everybody. So the Olympism 365 has, in a consortium way, this way to approach and to reach the grassroots organizations. Otherwise, for us, the IOC as organization is complicated. We can do it. Yes, we can do it. Funding programs, I give an example. So we have Olympic Solidarity, so we provide money to the National Olympic Committees, but the National Olympic Committees have to develop a program. So I give an example. Uzbekistan wants to develop a gender equality workshop in a specific area to have more women working as a coach, create a pathway from athlete to becoming a coach. So we can support financially this program, but it's not going to be us implementing the program. So they propose, and then if the program has some kind of logic and it will have it will be sustainable, then we finance this program. And I can tell you that in the last 4 years, and I'm receiving these numbers right now, we supported 140 programs specifically on gender equality worldwide. And then you have also international federations doing a lot of programs. So we support all these programs, but it's impossible for us to take the lead in all of them, because, for example, me in my office here in Lausanne, it will be impossible to be developing a grassroots program in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So that would be impossible, but through Olympism 365, that's possible.
Yeah, I think I did answer the question, but it was probably not a good one, because you would have remembered it. I'm going to say it again, though, because I do think media bring value in that by promoting female athletes who are as role models. They are healthy, they are positive, they demonstrate values like commitment and hard work and resilience. And these role models don't have to be for girls to become champions. They don't have to be Olympians. But like I was saying for Ilona, she's saying go out and try sports. Just play sports. And don't be critical of your body and accept your body for what it can do. But then there's so many other things that have to fall into place. This is what we do, but there are so many other stakeholders in sport that need to do better.
Wonderful, it works. Thanks very much for this panel. Elsa, I'm going to jump right back onto what you were saying, because I was a sports journalist as well, and I think this, with the way the media is working, has shifted completely. So I would discuss quite nicely with you that maybe girls won't be watching TV, young ones don't watch TV anymore. So I think maybe one of the answers of how to keep the buzz going between one mega event and the other is definitely through these ambassadors or through the athletes and through their social media, the way you were saying. So I'm wondering how you as big mega event organizers can interact with these people, still give them their freedom of speech, etc., but still feed them the stories or nominate them as ambassadors. What's the tactics behind that?
Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Sorry.
Yeah. Of course, we also have our ambassadors for this tournament, and we had a big discussion. Who should it be? Is it? And we decided not to go for the mega stars, because in women's football in Switzerland we don't have this yet. But it's more on a local. Yeah, we have one. I agree. But it's also there. Its accessibility is getting difficult as well. But we have. And it's also difficult if is someone still playing football for us to engage with these people, especially for tournament times. So we went more regional, and every host city has local ambassadors, which we help to transmit the message. It's healthy, it's cool, it's common play, but it's definitely not an easy because the young people are watching. As you said, they don't watch TV anymore. No, it's gone.
We're close to time anyway, so but we'd love to hear more. I want to return to Jack's question briefly, and I'll talk to her more at LSU about this. But I think as you have an interest in physical fitness and health across the lifespan, one of the things that storytelling has done, and this was true in Australia during the World Cup, and I've seen it in the US as well, where now they're talking again about the 99 team, the 99 US World Cup team who set the US on this path to success. The original Matildas who started the women's game are being unearthed and uncovered. But perhaps there's another layer that we could go to, like what are they doing now? What are the opportunities for women post-career in sport and physical activity? But I will say this, because we're about to wrap up. For somebody who spends their life being critical can be positive and negative. And we are at an exciting time, the most exciting time I've ever seen for girls and women, for girls and women's sport around the world. And the opportunities, I think, are exponential. And it's wonderful to see the federations, the hosts of major events, and the media all on the same page, saying we're working together, we're pulling together for the good of women and girls. And so for me, that's a very exciting point to finish on. Yes, we have many challenges. There's still too much body shaming. There's still too much violence and abuse. Having said that, we're now being able to also see that there are so many positive aspects for girls and women as well. and we have to remember to find better ways to extend them in the global south, as well as across developed countries. So thank you very much for your attendance. I think there's a brief wrap up, but thank you for your participation and staying with it till the end. I'm on day 2 of jet lag, which is always my worst. So I appreciate your indulgence of my stumbling over the session. Thank you.